Our presentation tonight, public engagement presented by Rolando A. Bonilla, Chief Strategy Officer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, members of the community. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to come present before you this evening. Mr. Mayor, I think your words are a great segue into the conversation that we've been invited to have with this esteemed body this evening. My name is Rolando Bonilla. I am the Chief Strategy Officer for Volair Strategic Advisors. We are a communications firm that works directly with cities throughout California and really focus on creating a public information apparatus within a city the size of Antioch, for example. Within that apparatus, two of the things that we bring are, number one, we create the opportunity for the city to have a much more robust and much more real-time focused conversation with your constituents. You look at cities throughout the state of California, one of the things that's happening is that technology is changing, the method by which we communicate with constituents is changing, and cities that aren't taking advantage of those environmental changes in the communication space are truly at a disadvantage. The second part that we offer is big picture marketing, the big picture positioning of a city in terms of its goals, in terms of trying to attract new business opportunities, trying to engage folks to develop, to support local businesses, to spend dollars in the community that will stay within this community. One of the things that makes us unique as a firm is that every single one of us at our company has public service experience. Like you, I have been on the dais before. I have served in the city and county of San Francisco. I have served in the city of San Jose at the highest levels of government. Everyone within my organization has government experience, and we also have folks within the organization that are focused really on marketing that come from the press. I also have personal roots. I'm going to point to your camera and wave. My family lives in Antioch, and this is a place that for over a decade, through familial relationship, I have also had the pleasure of calling home. Where we are today is simple. To the mayor's point, this is a city that is clearly on the move. This is a city that has a lot of opportunity to really create itself as the epicenter of the Highway 4 corridor. If you look throughout the Bay Area, whether it's Tri-Valley, Tri-Cities, whether it's Redwood City, regardless of the area, we're anchored by the epicenters of San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose. And then within that, we've got cities that are utilizing communications, utilizing the public information space to put themselves in a competitive advantage where they are then able to attract business, to attract tourism, to attract the opportunity to really talk about who they are and sell themselves appropriately. Equally, those cities are spending a large amount of time focused on the most important commodity any city has, and that's the people behind me. Your constituents, your residents. Ultimately, if they have a good experience in terms of the communications conversation with the city, then they will be the best ambassadors in terms of telling their friends and their neighbors and everyone else why Antioch is a good place to go. One of the other reasons why Antioch is at the epicenter of this new change is you are, to the mayor's point, at a point where Highway 4 has been expanded, E-BART is coming to Antioch, the trajectory of growth within the Bay Area continues coming to this part of eastern Contra Costa County. So because of that, as the new Bay Area, you have amenities, you have the opportunity now. I can jump on a BART train in San Jose within the next year and likely be able to take a BART train here to Antioch. Same with San Francisco. You now have the ability to attract an entire constituency of folks that perhaps never thought about coming to Antioch in the past, but now within the prism of the new Bay Area, it's a BART trip away, it's a 45-minute car ride away. You could do fun things in the Bay Area. You can spend dollars, you can spend time, you can eat, and then you can go back to San Francisco, to Oakland, to San Jose, but really giving the city an important economic boost in terms of dollars coming in and folks wanting to really plant a flag here. An example of that, and I apologize, I know I had a PowerPoint that I know you've had time to review, but I also want to be mindful of time. An example of that for us is the city of Soledad, California. the city of Soledad, California is competing with the city of Monterey and the city of Carmel. And if you're familiar with those two cities, pretty tough to compete with from a tourism standpoint. We were brought in 4 years ago, and we have completely turned that city around. We relabeled them the Gateway to the Pinnacles. We strengthened their communications in terms of constituents. We developed a public narrative of them being a destination point. Now, we were very clear. We're not saying we're Monterey. We're not saying we're Carmel. But without a doubt, we were saying we're a city worthy of a visit, worthy of, if you're here for 6 days, make us your 6th day. Well, when we did that, there was no communications infrastructure. There was no visitor center. Candidly, we were laughed out of the room. There is no way you're going to make the city of Soledad a destination. And at that time, they couldn't fill their hotels. 4 years later, that city has a visitor center. That city has been featured on the front page of USA Today, the Los Angeles Times, has been covered nationally as an outdoor destination center, has been covered nationally as an epicenter of wine in southern Monterey County. That's an example of, and hotels. They now have to build new hotels because the ones that they do have are now at capacity given the large influx of tourism, given the fact that we have leveraged that Pinnacles National Park. Remember, those rocks have been there for centuries before the city ever existed. But we leveraged them 4 years ago as a reason to visit, and because of that, they've been able to increase tax revenue. They've been able to get folks to stay in their hotels. Their businesses are thriving. They invested in a visitor center, and they continue making that the epicenter of their commitment to community and growth. I see something similar here in Antioch. I think when you Google Antioch, and I did that this morning, unfortunately, what comes up often is crime, issues of crime, issues of negativity. But because I have the privilege of having family here, I know that that's not what this city is. The city is hardworking. The city is about moving forward. The city is about giving families an opportunity. And I want to help you change that narrative. I think one of the, from a fiscal standpoint, one of the reasons why cities do hire us to be partners with them is that for the cost often of an LTE, less actually, you get the expertise of 10 highly skilled individuals who work in this space on a daily basis and who quite quickly would have the ability to develop a communications infrastructure within your organization, and rather quickly within that, build a timeline of key milestones in terms of changing your narrative around, number one being the changing of that internet footprint for your city. If you Google it yourself right now, that's not the city you serve. It's a city that has issues like any other city in America, but that's not who you are. And I think if you want to attract tourism, if you want to attract investment, it's not going to happen when that's the first thing people see when they're doing their homework. So if given the opportunity, we would love the opportunity to come by and develop that infrastructure, develop a strategy focused on marketing, develop a strategy focused on interface with constituents in order to give them the opportunity as well of having much more real-time connectivity with the council, with city departments, and having responses in real time, which nowadays is quite candidly the standard. So I can keep going. I love talking about this stuff, but I also want to give you the floor and give you the opportunity to ask me any questions.
Questions from council? Councilmember Thorpe.
I have a question around community engagement. Can you give me some examples of what that would look like? Only because I agree that is a huge challenge for this
Sure, I think
the government.
A couple doing some research coming in. A couple of items I've seen just quite candidly is, for example, on social media platforms. Facebook's still the number one method by which to communicate. The fundamental problem you're having, though, is that there are too many sites. So there's almost like this, who are you, who's talking to me, what's that city's unified voice? So clearly you'd have to do a needs assessment of the tools that do exist. That's a great example of community engagement where you've got the right thinking, but you don't necessarily have the right steps in place by which to really leverage that and really give the constituents the opportunity to feel that they're talking to one city, one voice, one point of view. That's one thing we change. Looking at some of your marketing materials in terms of your videos, although well produced, I would say the messaging is not necessarily where you want to be as a city. I think one of the messages I heard this morning was, I think the first minute and a half was, Antioch is an option because San Francisco is as expensive as Paris. It's expensive. It's, the world's expensive. Come to Antioch because we're affordable. Well, I think there's an implied understanding that that's true. That's factual. The pocketbook will bring me here. But when a city is trying to put its best foot forward, saying we're a better option because we're not that city isn't the message you want. The equivalent of that would be, I tell the love of my life, hey, look, I want to marry you, but you don't want to marry me, so I guess you'll do. You don't want to be the you'll do, right? You want to be the epicenter. You want to be the conversation starter. So I think I hope I answered your question, but those are examples of community engagement tools that the city is utilizing that could be made better to really serve your constituents.
Other questions? Councilmember Tiscarino.
Yeah, Mr. Bonilla, thank you for your presentation. I
Thank you.
truly appreciate your knowledge and what you're trying to get accomplished. One of the things, the question I would present to you is, imagine you're selecting Antioch because you see a potential here.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, but my question is, are you also engaged or working with other cities in our surrounding area? Because I think a complement of cities that are marketed as a whole is productive as well, or are you just focusing on the city of Antioch?
I represent a myriad of cities up and down California. I represent a myriad of cities in the Bay Area. Now, when it comes to East Contra Costa, when it comes to the Highway 4 corridor, I'll be very clear. I'm here tonight because in my book, you are the epicenter. It's just a matter of who's planting that flag first, right? I go back to the Soledad example. When the issue of Pinnacles turning, who is going to be the gateway to the national park, there were 5 competing cities that wanted that mantra. But this was essentially a market share question. Whoever plants the flag first dominates the conversation and then dominates the access to capital, the ability to bring in resources, the ability to really be the capital. When we did that, those cities were still in discussion with themselves, and by the time we planted the flag, it was too late. We had established ourselves as the gateway to the Pinnacles, and that's not going to change at this point. That's the standard now. So to answer your question, council member, we are here in Antioch tonight because in our book, without a doubt, you go to San Francisco, people know Antioch, right? And we want to leverage that, and we see that as a tremendous opportunity to really give you the opportunity, considering some of the changes at the council level as well, to really take advantage of this new Antioch, this new Bay Area. But it's not going to happen doing the same old, right? I'm not knocking staff in any way, but the fundamental reality is you do need at this point, at this juncture, you're going to have to bring in a professional team that can strengthen your ties with the community, but more importantly, equally important, can actually put you in a position where you become an appealing option for the rest of the Bay Area.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Councilmember Wilson.
Councilmember, please.
Thank you for your presentation. I
Thank
really enjoyed hearing it, and I was reading about the city of Soledad and what you guys have done
Thank
there.
you.
Would love to hear of other examples. I have 2 questions actually. So the first question is other examples from other cities in the Bay Area. It sounded like you hadn't worked with the city in Contra Costa, which is fine. But if you
No,
had,
I do work with cities in Contra Costa.
Okay,
Yes. What I'm talking about is Eastern Contra
Each
Costa.
con- Can you talk about the
sure.
cities in Contra
Sure.
Costa? you've
One
worked
of them is the city of San Pablo. The city of San Pablo brought us on board about 5 years ago. They were, at the time, it was just a political operation. They were trying to get, I believe it was a bond passed. We were called, we demonstrated to the city our ability to really communicate and engage. What we did was twofold. Step 1 was we developed a narrative for the city. We centralized the information. We really created that story. Step 2 was we told that story to regional press. Step 3, right, was we also really created a social media community that was micro-targeted only to residents in the city of San Pablo. This was, again, when we were doing the political aspect of this. Well, that bond passed without a problem. We've been there since, again, for 5 years now. And what we've done is just built on that. And now the city of San Pablo has a very robust communications infrastructure where we handle their press, We handle their social media. We handle crisis. We handle, in other words, I remember there was an issue here some time back about something at the water park, and I don't remember the details. I do know personally I like that water park. But long story short is, in situations like that, you could be working really hard to build your city's reputation, but if you're not protecting yourself, then that moment is the moment that somewhat undermines everything you've done. And now you're, instead of taking 2 steps forward, you've taken 7 steps back. We're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Really, you name the crisis, whether it's someone dying somewhere, whether it's a crime of a high level. I mean, whatever you could think of, we've dealt with. And that's also one of the other reasons why cities and public agencies actually like working with us. Oftentimes your internal PIO, I'm going to quote the Godfather here. The internal PIO is more of a peacetime. We'll do the ribbon cuttings, we'll talk about the library opening. But when things get hot and careers are on the line and reputations are on the line, we're going to get that call.
You kind of answered my second question about essentially, and you can kind of elaborate on what I'm getting ready to ask or talk to you about, is getting ahead of the story and pushing those stories out that are
Always.
good to combat the negativity.
I'm in TV studios every week. I was there this morning doing shoots. You'll instantly have the opportunity to get your story out there in terms of framing it. Right now, I want to be clear too. I don't want to ignore your local papers. I know you've got local papers here. We definitely want to talk to them as well and share this story with them. But I think, yeah, without a doubt, it is always about grabbing the city's agenda, developing a framework for it, putting it out there and competing. And I hate to break it to everyone, right? But the reality is other cities are already doing this, and they're doing it with the benefit of getting the return that they are now at the table having conversations, and also they are in a position now where they can attract business, where they can attract tourism, because they're controlling what is being said about them. I understand. Councilmember, I believe you're in real estate, correct? Is that? I too am a realtor by trade as well. A lot of things by trade, but as you know, selling a home, it's the story you tell. It's the difference between fixer-upper and it's just in bad shape. And I think you've got a city that's no longer, it's not a fixer-upper anymore. It's a major player in the Bay Area. Could be, should be the capital of the Highway 4 corridor. The question becomes for you as a council, are you in a position where you are prepared to take that mantle, be the first to market, claim that stake and say, we are ready to move forward? Or do you continue waiting and possibly Pittsburgh, possibly another city says, we're not going to make that move? That's a question for you at a policy level, but I'm here because clearly I think the opportunity is now.
Any other questions?
Just 2 questions. So you would assist with, I guess, media relations, and then you would be on hand for like bond measures, ballot initiatives. So that would be part of the portfolio.
We have that capability. Obviously, those would be outside of the scope of working with the city. Oftentimes when we do work in this capacity, because of our extensive background, I come from politics, 20 years, did all my training in San Francisco, worked directly for Mayor Brown, Attorney General, well, Senator now, worked with her as well. In fact, I was a mentee. So that's what we do, and that's something we can do quite easily if necessary. So again, we would do that more than anything as part of our partnership. To be helpful, of course, outside of the scope of the agreement, since this would be serving the city, and that would be a campaign related, yeah. And city attorney would guide us in that process.
Other questions? If there are no other questions, thank you, Mr. Bonilla.
Thank you, Council, Mr. Mayor, appreciate it. Thank you.
Moving on to